sort of found by sneaking through a parking lot in the Hamptons and kind of breaking into the studio a little bit. I found the owner.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and you're listening to Unboxing Humans. Jennifer Maanavi is the CEO and co-founder of Physique 57, a bar, fitness, and media company offering specialized fitness experiences in boutique studios around the world and through numerous digital platforms. Since 2006, she has been a connection, impact, and purpose-focused entrepreneurial leader in the health and wellness industry, and currently serves as an advisor to several companies in the wellness space. In addition to delivering a first-class customer experience, Jennifer is passionate about unleashing the unlimited potential of founders on their path to being effective, mission-driven CEOs. Jennifer, welcome to Unboxing Humans.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, Danielle. Thank you for having me.
I'm incredibly excited to speak with you today because I find your background so interesting. I find Physique 57 an amazing workout, but also such a fantastic company, and the way you started it to be an incredible story. But I want to start our conversation going back beyond your world in fitness and wellness, because I was surprised to learn that you actually started your career in finance.
I did. And growing up, I wanted to be a dancer. And there was a show, which you won't know, it's called Solid Gold. I used to want to be a solid gold dancer. I used to want to be an NFL cheerleader. So first I wanted to do something in the dance or like athletic area. And then I somehow decided I wanted to work on Wall Street really early, like even in high school. And I didn't exactly know what it meant. I just remember thinking, I want to work in one of those big buildings and I want to be a banker. And so I really started down that path. So I worked in investment management pretty much right after I graduated. I worked in New York City, I worked at Deutsche Bank, I worked at Morgan Stanley, I went to Columbia Business School. And then for 5 years, I was at Morgan Stanley before I started Physique 57. And I so really figured that I would be a banker. And then this idea presented itself. And within really just like a couple weeks, I completely changed the trajectory of my life, not just my career, but really my whole life.
Well, so let's go back to being the dancer. What was Solid Gold? I'm not familiar with the show.
There's no reason that you or anyone listening to this podcast should know what Solid Gold is. Solid Gold was like the #1 show, probably late 70s, early 80s. And it was a show where they would do the top 10 songs on the radio and dance to them. And then there was also a show called Dance Fever that was similar. So those two shows, along with maybe Love Boat and Fantasy Island, like those were all of the big shows back in my day. And those shows really inspired me. And then also Flashdance, the movie, was a huge inspiration. I was in 6th grade when that came out. But then another movie came out, which is called Working Girl,
yes,
with Melanie Griffith. And when I saw that, it was really, I thought, no, I don't want to be Flashdance. I want to be Working Girl. And then I really combined both to start Physique 57.
It seems like media really inspired you.
Yes, it really did. And when you're young, you get inspiration. I mean, we didn't have social media. We didn't have a lot of things. So you got inspiration from books and people and movies and I mean, many other ways. But I just remember those two movies really inspiring me quite a bit.
It's incredible because, we talk so much, I say like we as society, about the influence media has on individuals and especially young women, and how we need to see more women in roles of power and in roles of leadership, especially in the media as well as in real life. And here you are, the living embodiment of why we need that. What was it about finance? I mean, it's not an easy world in finance.
No.
What was it that kept you there for so long and kept your interest in it?
I would say a lot of it was the people, whether it was on the client side or internally at the banks. Just really smart people, very driven people, not necessarily warm and friendly, I'm not going to say that, but definitely very intelligent and very cutting edge. And finance really has so much. There's microeconomics, there's macroeconomics. Like you really understand what's happening in the world in the finance industry and other industries too, obviously, but you really had to read like this is back when there was newspapers that you had to read before you got to work. And I just felt like I was very abreast of current events and there was theories and math and there was so much to it and I really enjoyed it. But I would say especially the people. And I just liked the industry and I liked everything about it. I wore pantyhose, if you don't even probably know what that is.
I know what pantyhose are.
Yeah. So it was like old school, and you would get all dressed up and go to work and sit in these big offices. And I really, really liked it. So I wasn't necessarily looking to become an entrepreneur. I will say though, at Columbia Business School, many, many, many years ago, entrepreneurship wasn't really a popular topic. It was something that just internet people in Silicon Valley did. So in New York City, it was just becoming a thing, if I could call it that. And there was one elective that about 20 of us signed up for called entrepreneurship, intro to entrepreneurship. And it was second semester senior year and second semester of the second year. And it really was one of those classes that you took like, oh, that'll just be fun. And lo and behold, it was just my favorite class completely. And what I really enjoyed about it was just starting with a whiteboard and creating something. And I had never been presented with that idea before. And I really took to it. And I didn't even know then to go, it's hard to just graduate and go be an entrepreneur, but just to go start a company right off the bat. But it just stuck with me that I really enjoyed it. And then as I was at Morgan Stanley, I realized that I had some sort of entrepreneurial skills. I look back to the fact that I had started, little businesses, and even in elementary school, I was selling barrettes to crossing guards. So like I didn't even know that was entrepreneurship. And then I was like, you know what? I think I sort of was one, even at like 8 years old. So I felt confident with the education and the background that I had, and with this entrepreneurial spirit to start my own company.
So let's get into how you started Physique 57, because my understanding was at the time there were really no workout classes that were following this group model. You were the first.
Yeah, so this is 2006. So there were a few things in Manhattan. There was big gyms that we all went to. Equinox was certainly the leader there, still is. There was yoga, there were yoga studios, and those were sort of like hidden nooks and crannies type of places that were very homey and very nice. But if you didn't obviously like yoga, and yoga wasn't as popular back then, much much more popular now. And then you had Pilates studios, but those were sort of like sophisticated and expensive private lessons. And like that was sort of for older ladies. So that wasn't really a thing. So really, if you were in your mid-20s, early 30s, you just went to the gym. But there was a place that was tucked away on Madison Avenue called the Lotte Burke method, which was a bar studio for 25 years. And it was really popular amongst like a small group of people on the Upper East Side. And some other people too, but pretty much it was like this Upper East Side little oasis of this very difficult and effective exercise method and a very homey nature to it. It just was it was in a townhouse, so you sort of felt like you were going to someone's house to work out. And I sort of stumbled upon that after graduate school, and I just fell in love. So I had been going to these gyms and stuff, but I just really didn't like, nothing was resonating. And in graduate school, I worked out one time in 2 years. So clearly I wasn't a big worker outer, but I knew that I should probably start. So I was about 28. It's like I should probably start working out. And that's how I found bar exercise and this place, the Lotte Burke method, which then closed. And then I teamed up with one of their top teachers, or really the top teacher, to start Physique 57.
That's so interesting to me that the studio closed and you said, oh, this business might not work and that's why it closed. So I'm going to go try to start a similar business because mine will work. What was that thought process like?
Yeah, so good question. So when they announced it, and back then you did have email, certainly. It wasn't like,
It's 2007, yeah.
Not long ago. But this particular business didn't have an email system. So they didn't even send an email that they were closing. They literally had like a piece of paper on the door. And this was in like June or something, June 2005. And the piece of paper just said, we're closing. We're closing in New York, something like July something, and they had a studio in the Hamptons, and we're closing in the Hamptons on September 30th. So they really had like 4 weeks notice. They had no computer systems there. Like they just had cards. It was just really antiquated. And I just couldn't believe it was closing. And I had a 1 year old at the time. And really, my time was so limited. And this one particular exercise method, bar fitness, is so effective within just 1 hour, a few times a week. And I just thought, I have to keep this going. And so I snuck around, and it's a long story, but I sort of found by sneaking through a parking lot in the Hamptons and kind of breaking into the studio a little bit, I found the owner. So I went out to the Hamptons to find her. And I talked to her and I said, obviously, why are you closing? Like, what's the deal? I didn't know her at all. And the reason it was closing was really all personal reasons. So it had nothing to do with the demand. It had nothing to do with even supply. It was just she didn't want to keep going, and she had some lease issues, et cetera, et cetera. But the health of the consumer and the interest was still there. And I asked her if I could buy it from her, and she didn't want to sell. She was very nice, but she didn't want to sell. She didn't really know what she wanted to do. She's like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this, but here's the phone number for my top instructor, Tanya Becker, and my smartest instructor. If there's anyone you could start a business with, it's her. And she wrote her phone number down on a Post-it and like kicked me out of it and let me on my way. I was like, okay. So I had like a dream and a Post-it, and that's how it started. So I started to call Tanya, who didn't know me, and that's how it started. So 2 months later, we incorporated after I got that Post-it.
There's a lot of interesting tidbits to unpack in that story. I would like to go back to you sneaking around a parking lot to find her. So, I mean, that is a level of determination and interest in this, right? It was, I mean, you have to imagine every other person who is going to this class said, oh, that's a shame, it's closing. Oh, I really loved it. And they moved on with their lives in some way. But something really stuck with you. So what was driving that? What made you do that?
I absolutely loved the product. I mean, this product is so I wasn't really out of shape when I started, but it kicked my butt and I went down 2 dress sizes. I didn't even know I could go down 2 dress sizes. And I don't want this to be like a vanity, sound vain, but I just couldn't believe. And also with this dancer background, I just thought I was fit, and I just thought that I had things figured out, and I did not. So when I started taking this exercise class in 2000, I realized that I could be so much stronger than I thought. I could be slimmer, which isn't the goal necessarily, but I just didn't know I had this other physique that I could have. And my posture improved, my back. I used to have a bad back just from dancing all that time, and all my back pain went away. Like everything went away. I was like always at the tailor having my clothes taken in, and people actually thought I was taller. They're like, "Are you growing?" Because I just stood up strong. I just couldn't believe like the 3 benefits of exercise. And keep in mind, this is at a time when not people weren't always exercising. Like you didn't go to work and go to the gym. Some people did, but it was not that popular. So what might now seem like, of course, Jen, like that's what happens when you exercise. That really wasn't the thing back then. It was really like step class and like aerobics was what was happening. So I just so for one reason to put these in pillars was I couldn't believe the benefits, and I didn't want other people to not have access to those benefits. Like it's a shame. Like this product cannot go away. And I didn't really have many competitors at the time. And there was one in the city that was good, but there was only one. And I just felt like New Yorkers deserve an effective workout and fitness program, and they deserve to have more than one, because that's like a monopoly, which that's just not fair. And there's also should be in other locations. And in fact, it should be around the world. Like I was like, why would this only even be on the Upper East Side? This should really be everywhere. And I just had major conviction. And then on the other side, like the more personal side, I had this background. I was 33, so it was like that experience, but I had finance background and went to business school. And I just thought, well, why not me? Like who else would start it? Like should probably just be me. Like I'll do it. So I started to tell people, and this is, we didn't have phones, I didn't have people's phone numbers. I would just kind of try to tell as many people as I could that I was going to start this up. And then when Tanya agreed to join me, she had a lot of client names. And we really started with like just names written down on pieces of paper and would call them. And that's it. It was just like through the phone, just calling people is how we built the business initially. And then it got more technological, but at the time it was really just cold calling.
And what made you decide on the group fitness part? Is because that's what it was modeled after at the
Yeah,
other
it was.
studio.
Yeah, and interesting. With some, it's hard to believe, but at the time there wasn't a category called boutique fitness,
Yeah.
nor was this even called bar fitness. This was just called like there's two women on 57th Street doing something on the eighth floor. It had no name. So even for press releases, 90% of the interview was just like, what are you doing on the eighth floor of that art gallery building? Like it just wasn't a thing. And so for the group exercise, what I wanted to do was bring it from, it was group exercise. And so I wanted to keep it that way, but I wanted to kind of change many elements of it because it was just really tucked away on 67th Street between Madison and Fifth. And there was like, obviously no digital advertising. Like it was just a in the know type of place. So I decided to bring it to Midtown and obviously people were working 5 days a
Yeah.
week in Midtown back then, like Midtown was booming. And I put it right across the street from Bank of America. But I could only afford the rent on the eighth floor of this tiny art gallery building. And we just opened, and it was just, we didn't even have a name at first when we opened. It was called like Tanya's class. But then we started branding and all of that. And it started to really take off. And then many years later, it was called Boutique Fitness. Like I was like, okay, thank you. And then we started to be called Bar Fitness. I was like, oh, okay, thank you. It makes it a lot easier. So then we became a bar fitness brand in the boutique fitness industry. But for like 3 or 4 years, it was just Physique 57 is a really hard workout. You should check it out.
So those early classes, I was thinking about this without bar as an industry. There couldn't have been many instructors who were certified like today.
Something
Were
very close to zero.
right. So how did you manage that? Was Tanya teaching all the classes? Were you teaching classes?
No, I've never taught a class. I think that would be the hardest thing ever. Yes, but you're right. It was very hard because just describing what we were doing was a little kooky. So we had a very hard time. So we taught at the Martha, there's a dance studio that's actually no longer here, I don't think, called the Martha Graham Studio. And we taught there for many months, one or two classes a week as we were building out the bigger space. And during that time, Tanya, through her dance contacts, she had been a Lotte Burke teacher for 10 years and a dancer throughout and also even before then. So she had some Broadway friends and other friends, and she would just try to explain what we were doing. And then we started advertising in what's called Backstage magazine, which is where
Yeah.
actors and actresses find roles. So we just started advertising there and looking for dancers, not fitness professionals, but dancers, which is still what we do. And we slowly but surely found teachers, but it was very hard, very hard.
What were some of the biggest questions you got? I mean, as a first mover in the industry, I have to imagine so many people are like, "What? Like, you want me to do what? And I have to train and why? Why would I do it?"
I had one secret tactic for auditions and staff meetings is I would bring my son, who at the time was 1.5 or so that it would add some credibility to the fact that I wasn't completely insane. He would come because then also when we were hiring, we didn't have like a brand name or anything. It was just a corporate name, but they didn't even know when it was opening or where it was opening. So we were training, saying like, trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. We're building a studio on 57th Street. We're going to come up with a name. Like, we're good. And they're like, yeah, whatever. So it was really hard. I think integrity, like what's one of our core values now, humility, integrity. We just had to just try to help people trust that we were serious entrepreneurs and not crazy entrepreneurs.
And crazy only because it was a new business.
New business, and they had never seen this bar method, this type of exercise before. They had never seen one location teach the same class all day. Like, we don't understand. I mean, you're going to have like 45 classes of the same thing. Yes, And that became boutique fitness. Like, it wasn't like yoga at noon and strength training at 5 like a gym would have. The programming was one class of different levels all day, every day. And that was bonkers to a lot of
So I'm hearing this theme of people, like you
people.
felt stronger and you felt that your pain was going away and you really loved it because you felt great about yourself. And so it's that feeling I'm seeing, like carrying through, like, I feel great. I want more people to feel great. I want more people to feel stronger. That really resonated with me when you said that, actually, because when I've been to your classes, I leave and I'm like, wow, I feel strong. I feel that I gained muscle and like I can actually lift things. And so that theme of this is a community, this is for strength, this is for empowerment. How did you work to instill that in your people that you brought on?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was the first time I was a CEO of a company. So I read every book that the CEO should read. All my books are hidden behind the curtains in my apartment, like there's so many. But I would just read a lot about like creating culture and actually, believe it or not, at the time, this concept of corporate culture and core values was not a thing. That became popular more as these like big internet companies were like of all these cool young people were coming about, and so we really caught on early to that and did a lot of teacher meetings and staff meetings and communication. So I guess the answer would be just really communicating it and modeling it. And hospitality is key at Physique 57, which was hard, definitely hard when we had a lot of studios in New York and hundreds of people coming in and out every day. So there's a term called high volume hospitality, which is its own animal in a way than one at a time hospitality, if you want to put it that way. So we had to really show through our own modeling from a hospitality standpoint how we were talking about Physique 57. We had to write about it a lot. Like our Q&A was like 15 pages long, like the Q&A for clients to read. It was a lot about what the strength and the confidence, and then it was about the method. And we just had to explain things over and over and over again and weave in the actual personal benefits with the physical benefits so that it wasn't just about biceps and triceps. It was really about a total person. And in fact, I think one of the things we did, which was interesting, is our website didn't have like a human on it. It had a graphic. And if the graphic was of a person, a woman in a black dress. And so this, and I saw her, I had a branding agency and we found this picture. It was at a very successful, well-known designer in Paris that used it for his fashion show. And we took this image from his fashion show, we purchased it, and then I owned it for a long time. But we changed it up a little bit just to be a little more demure, sort of like a fun woman, but we made it a little more professional. So it was a woman with sunglasses and pearls and a black dress, and that was our image. So it was about when you're dressed up and when you're ready to go out, you will just feel like you're on top of the world, even potentially at a French fashion show or something. So we used that image from 2006 to 2016. So we didn't start putting humans on our website for a while. We actually had some pictures of people just doing the exercise, but really from a branding standpoint, it was all about this very confident woman. And our website said "Hello, gorgeous," which has been used a lot now, but at the time, that wasn't something that people would see.
What made you decide to break the mold? I mean, you're talking about these books that you read. Was this in the books or was this something that you just felt internally?
So I'll tell you, when we started, I had a great branding agency, a branding woman, and she would ask the right questions. You always need help when you're coming up with this. You need people to really like push your envelope and try to help you explain what you want to do. And she was great. Her name was Janice Pedley. She's moved on and doing amazing things now. She just was really smart in helping me think about the business. And this is before I even had a co-founder. This is before Tanya joined. Actually, let me go back. The first meeting I had about Physique 57 was with a branding agency. So Tanya was still mulling over whether or not she wanted to jump into this business idea. But I started to build the business anyway, because I just figured it's going to take months and months to get this off the ground. So I was meeting with a branding agency, telling them that I had no employees, I had no address, I had no product, but I really just wanted this brand. So the brand was built before Tanya joined because I wanted to share with her what this brand could be and put something in writing and put like vision boards together to help her understand what I was hoping that she and I could do together. So the brand was really about this confident, strong woman before we even incorporated. Like the branding meetings were in September. Tanya and I didn't incorporate until October, and then we started teaching in November. But we had this vision of what this brand could be. And one of the reasons why I started to really hone in on this like differentiated branding was in meeting with PR firms. And no offense to the PR firms I was meeting, it was just so cookie cutter, like girls in bikinis on the beach. It's like we don't have a beach in New York. Like we don't walk around in bikinis in Manhattan. Like I just couldn't. It was so cookie cutter. I just couldn't do it. But I decided to go the complete opposite direction and find a PR firm that focused only on fashion. Because fashion incorporates what we're talking about, like put on an outfit, you feel strong, you feel confident, and that's how I feel about exercise. Like it's almost like buying a new outfit. It's just you live in that outfit. So I chose a fashion firm for almost like 10 years and never went to the like general consumer fitness type of people.
I have to imagine that that took a lot of, I mean, trust in your gut
Mhm.
to say, this is how everyone is doing it. I'm going to do it a different way. Or was it easier because there weren't many people doing it yet?
There was no one doing it. So it was like just be as different as possible because you didn't even know what you were comparing yourself to. And I'll tell you, and if any entrepreneurs are on this listening,
Yeah.
once you quit a comfortable job and borrowed money and decided to start your own business, it's a snowball. Like you think that's crazy, like you just keeps going. So you really can't stop. You can't make that huge decision and then start taking baby steps. Like if you're going to go, you got to go. So I already was knee deep in 100% risk. So just pile it on because if you're going down, you're going down. So if it's crazy to have, if it's unusual or not, let's just say not common to have a fashion PR firm market your business, so be it. If it's not common to put an exercise studio on the eighth floor of an art gallery building, go with it. If it's not common to teach the same class 45 times a week, keep going. Like there's no reason to stop differentiating yourself and being unique when you've already started.
I love that. It, as I do more of these interviews, that's what I hear over and over. It's like, I just did it my way. And of course, there were people telling me, like, you must be crazy. Doesn't exist. Why would this work? Who's trekking up to the eighth floor to go to a fitness studio in an art gallery that they've never heard of? Like, you must be crazy. It'll never work. But it felt right. And you are the one who thought of the idea for it, right? So, like, that's what I always come back to for myself. Like, if it feels right to me, I'm also the one who had the idea. No one else had this idea. So that's why I'm the one who should keep doing the things that seem right in my head, because I'm the one who was crazy enough to think of it in the first place.
And you get, and I'll say this to add a little reality to the situation. You do get clues along the way that you're doing the right thing, and sometimes you get clues maybe or signs that you're not. So I'm not saying you always get positive ones, but if you keep your eyes and ears open, you realize that this just might work. And I think you just need a couple of those to keep going. You just like, okay, well, like I was at, this is back, you had to go to Staples, believe it or not, or like the FedEx to like send a fax. I've sounded like I'm 100. I'm not that old, by the way.
No,
But you
it's
started,
not you, it's technology that's
yeah,
changed.
you got very fast. So if you needed to like send a contract to someone, you had to like stand online and go and then have them make a copy, whatever. Because I was obviously working from home just as an entrepreneur. So I was at Staples and FedEx a lot, let's just say that. And I was on the phone with Tanya online at Staples. Not very glamorous, my little flip phone. And we're talking about something. And I must have said in that conversation, like exercise and Tanya. And maybe I mentioned the word bar. If there was like a bar or, a ballet bar, because that's our main piece of equipment. And someone at Staples said, "Oh my gosh, are you talking to Tanya Becker?" She was like famous in our bar world. And so that was like, oh my, and so she was going crazy, like, oh my gosh, Tanya's going to start teaching again because the Lotte Burke method had closed. So that was like a clue. And then there was other clues of people finding me and like you just, if you look around, you say like, well, they're like the woman at Staples is excited. And so little by little, you realize like, I think this could work. And so that's, I think, gives you some fuel to keep going. And then, of course, there's things that, you realize maybe it's not going to, you think maybe it's not going to work. But if you just can double down on the excitement of those little signals around that reinforce your idea, you can really go far with those little tiny ideas, those little tiny sparks can keep you going.
I love that. And I would imagine those sparks kept you going if we fast forward now 17 years to building the online subscription classes.
Yeah, yeah. We started, so we built out a whole, so for the first couple of years we built out a whole bunch of studios in New York, which is really fun. And then, however, instead of doing that again and again, we thought, and luckily, like we had a nice celebrity following. We were getting known, little people, like there's something called brand tourism that you can keep your eye on. Like when people come to visit, if they visit your studio, that's a good sign that somehow, and this is before social media, but like somehow someone in some state knows about you. It's like, oh, I think this is like people know about us from other places. And so I thought, well, instead of opening another studio, why don't we put that same amount of money into doing, which again, it's going to date me a lot, DVDs. So we started to create these DVDs. And back then, you didn't have like user generated content like you had production companies, whatever. I'll spare you the details, but making a DVD was a huge deal, like 15 people on set. And we made DVDs. And that was instead of a bricks and mortar strategy. So we created a media business back in 2008. So it was a really long time ago. And started making DVDs. We made more DVDs. And then QVC found out about them. So we started selling DVDs on QVC. And then, obviously DVDs are not popular anymore. And then we learned that you can digitize your content, which was a word that no one even understood what that meant. It's like, what does that even mean? And so we learned how to do that. And we put these videos up online, which was like crazy. And people started to watch them. We're like, oh my gosh. So we started doing on-demand fitness in 2011. So we've been doing it for a really, really long time. So the 400 videos we have are really well produced, and we add content every week. And then during COVID, that really saved the business. That went from being 10% of our revenue to 100% of our revenue because New York was closed for 53 weeks. So thank goodness we had an on-demand platform. And then during COVID, we did something else, which is we had our teachers work from home, and you could basically, like everyone else was doing, you could zoom in to class, and still now, between the on-demand platform and the Zoom program, it's still 50% of our revenue. And most of the studios I closed for good.
I need to go back to the DVDs. So because you started the business wanting group fitness, you liked going to the Lotte classes, the Lotte dance classes, because you felt homey and everyone was together. So what was the shift that happened that made you say, well, we could reach more people if we do DVDs? And how did you balance that with this sense of community and this group that is really true to your heart?
Great question. So going back to it took me 8 weeks to convince Tanya to join me as a co-founder. And that's, a whole other conversation of like co-founder pairings and building that relationship. And we're still like soul sisters. Like she's the best. And one of the things that when we met, became very clear, like within 20 minutes, is that we both loved this exercise method. She'd been teaching it, and everything I'm talking about as far as my results were what she was seeing in her clients for 10 years. So she like had me down. She's like, I know everything you love about it is everything I love teaching. And we were exactly the same age by like a couple months. So she had been teaching it for 10 years, and I had been participating in it for about 5 years. So we were like on the same page from that standpoint. And number two, we both said, almost at the same time, this should really be all over the world. Like, why would this, like, I know we're talking about 57th Street in New York City, but like, wouldn't this actually be better everywhere? Yeah, totally. So when we were deciding on other studios in New York, it just became like, like we want this to be everywhere. So doing a DVD would be a way to sell it everywhere. And we actually sold those DVDs in all 50 states in 30 days back in 2008. Like they were being shipped off to Alaska, Nebraska. I mean, for New Yorkers, we don't think we have much of an impact beyond the tri-state area sometimes, especially again, no social
Yeah.
media, nothing. We had websites that kept crashing all the time, by the way, and ours did crash the day we sold them. Our website went down for like 3 days, but we don't need to talk about that because that was horrendous. But to your point, what happened to answer your question? What happened at the exact time that we started to sell DVDs? Something called Facebook came on the scene, and we didn't even know what it was. And we had, some lovely young assistants at the studio, and they were like, well, I can just post something. And they would like just type in like, hi people, we have DVDs now. And so we really, really, so to answer your question, how do we keep the community going? Thank goodness for Facebook, because that's really where that was the mechanism we used to create community. And then we had to hire a consultant, and it was hysterical that you could even call yourself a Facebook consultant when Facebook had been out for like 5 minutes. But people were Facebook consultants, and we hired one, and she taught us what to do, in her opinion, with this new thing. And so we built up a really strong Facebook community, which we still have. And we just try to put into a digital context the customer service and hospitality elements of the studio experience. And was it the same? No, but it was, we tried, it was close. And we built up really a global community at this point. And I was actually coincidentally just checking some numbers this morning, and we have views in 65 countries every day on our on-demand platform.
How full circle that you were originally interested in dance from media, and then you ended up creating a media bar, but these elements of dance with dancers teaching classes into the homes of so many people who I'm
Yeah,
sure have been influenced by your DVDs and by your subscriptions
yeah,
and
it's
now
been
have
great.
found
And
their own path.
yeah, and I'll tell you something so funny. My son is going to the University of Toronto. It's a humongous school. And there was a Zoom for new parents last Friday. So I made DVDs in 2008. So we're talking a long time ago. And here I am Zooming with all these new parents. It's a huge school in another country. And they gave us an opportunity to type in your location and your email if people wanted to connect. And there's people from all over the world on this Zoom. And I just put in like Jennifer Maanavi, New York City, my email. And someone said, oh my gosh, I have your DVDs in the chat. Hysterical. It's like, oh my God. And I was texting my team. I'm like, the DVDs don't die. Like they're still out there. So yeah, they're still like people. I don't know. I don't even know how to play a DVD anymore, but she has them. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy to meet you. So when you do a product like that, it just lives forever. And same thing with the studio. But you just have to, they were what, like $20. So like someone buys it and they get it, and then you're in their living room forever and ever and ever.
Must have been just such an incredible moment.
It was
Uh,
so, I couldn't believe it. It was awesome. So I've connected with her, and her son's going to same school. So it is so funny. Like I have a DVD friend for my son to go to school in Canada. It's hysterical. I was at a birthday party many years ago, and someone with an English accent was there. It was like a friend of my friend whose birthday we were celebrating, and she just kept saying, "You look so familiar." And she's from like a small town in England. You look so familiar. You look so familiar. And we could not have any reason to know each other. She's living in a small town in England, and here we are in the West Village. And I was like, I just don't know how I would know you. And then she was like, oh my gosh, you're Jennifer and Tanya from those DVDs. My mom has one because we were on a shopping channel in England, and we sold them all over like the countryside. So the point is not to say, oh wow, we have these successful DVDs, just to say when you are creating your business, if you develop these other channels, you just don't know who you're going to affect and where it's going to go. And like the QVC business was huge for us. and the DVD business was huge for us. Like just these brand extensions can really, really bring you in a very, very interesting direction and that you won't even know. And to your point about technology, like who would have thought that this would have turned into an on-demand platform? Who would have thought during the pandemic we would have videos showing in China? Like we were really did something with this app called Keep, which has 200 million people on it in China. And during COVID, I was just so desperate for any relevancy and revenue and business that I shipped them off to China and they ended up doing really well on this app. Like, thank God. So that I'm not on, I don't need to be on it anymore. But you just never know what asset this could prove to be for you in the future.
I think that's so powerful, and I think about it a lot with my book. There is something so amazing about the physicality of it. Like, so much of
Mhm.
what we do lives on a screen. And I remember when I opened the box of books for the first time and I picked it up, I was like, this is like physically here in my hands. And I know that when I hand it to someone, like, or when they buy it in a store, when they buy it online, whatever, when it physically arrives in their home and it sits on their shelf and
Yeah.
it's part of their interaction in their day. And I mean, I know I have books my whole life, like on my childhood bookshelf, right? And it's like, oh, right, like that was the cover. And I know that one day I'll meet someone and say, oh my God, your book was on the shelf. I remember this, I remember that. And knowing it's just a different kind of connection
Yeah.
versus like the, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just, it's tactile. It's home in a different way or in a similar
Yeah.
way to what you were describing.
Yeah. People don't, I mean, I know people are pretty organized in their, they don't keep things forever, but they do keep some of these. Because and we had a book that came out too, and people like keep these things, and I don't know if it reminds them of a time in their life, but like I'm just surprised that people still own some of the things that we did over a decade ago, and I'm just grateful, and it's great to be in, like you're saying, in someone's living room or in even if it's in a box in the attic. I'm just happy we're still there. We're still part of that person's life and that and all of those like extensions can really help. And now, to what you were saying about the book, because so much is digital, they just unsubscribe and you're gone.
Yeah.
Um, but when you actually have something in your possession, it means a lot.
I never thought about that, but you're absolutely right. And with the DVDs, even if they didn't play it for months on end, they already had it. And they didn't
Mhm.
need to say, oh, do I want to spend the money again on it? What do I want to do? It's like, it's a one time, here it is. And maybe years later, something happens in your life that makes you want to pick it up. It makes you want to do the workout again. And you say, oh, I've been inspired. Or maybe you now have a daughter like, oh, I want her to feel strong and great. I used to do these workouts with my mom. I mean, if we're talking about a DVD from 2008, that's a possibility, right? And I think that it is the incredible power of the world that we no longer have. I'm wondering like how we can use the tools at our disposal now to even get back to that sense.
Yeah, and people still say like even when we create like a flyer or something or like brochures that obviously people aren't walking around with brochures all the time, but people still like to hold on to something. And so sometimes younger people will say, "Oh, let's just email it or let's just give them a link." And that they're not wrong, but having what's now called like a leave behind or something where you can actually just take something to have a little piece of you. I don't think that's old. Like I don't I think people do want to just put something in their bag. They'll discard it at some point, but just having something with them that reminds them of your brand, it's never a bad idea. There's budget and there's less things you need to consider. But they'll send you an email later with a link. Like at some point, how many links are you going to send to people? Like
I
really?
mean, I've started in my life picking up the phone and calling people, and they're shocked that I'm calling them and like, what did you fill out the form online? And I said, the amount of times in the last 2 weeks, I said, no, I didn't fill out your form online. I am calling you because my email inbox is full. I have hundreds and hundreds of emails. I wake up and like, truly I have 400 new emails. And I don't want to be another email that's annoying. It's annoying. So I'm picking up the phone and calling you, and I'm going to ask you a few questions. And then if you need me to fill out the form online to like do a formal process, okay. But why would I waste your time and your inbox, like going through that, when we can have this connection. And every single time I get, oh my God, thank you. Please, like, thank you for calling me and talking to me, because I don't want another email. Like, as much as that's the process, I don't want another email. I want a human connection. I want a real connection. I
I
think that's
know, and I think the hospitality, the concept of hospitality has sort of been diminished, and it's easy for us to blame COVID for all sorts of lifestyles gone wrong, but I would say that getting back to hospitality, and hospitality
yeah.
for now very much means restaurants and hotels. Okay, like that has traditionally been where you would learn about hospitality or be trained in hospitality, but hospitality should be everywhere. So there's sales training, sure, there's all sorts of different trainings you can give to your employees, but every company should have hospitality, and they don't, by the way, but they should. Like even if you're in, like I mean, really, there's no business that they shouldn't have this idea of when someone calls, make them feel really comfortable, make them feel glad that they reached out to you, and encourage them to even reach out to you.
Make them feel welcome in the class, make them feel welcome
Yeah,
online, and make them feel connected to each other and empowered and stronger.
yeah.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today and for chatting. What an incredible conversation. And you can learn more about Jennifer's work at the link in the show notes. Since you've made it to the end of the show, I'm going to take a wild guess that you enjoyed listening. So go ahead, check out the links in the show notes and give us a follow. We both know you want to. Unboxing Humans is hosted by me, Danielle Boris. To learn more about my work, go to danielleboris.com. And don't forget to grab your copy of my new book, The Energy of Weirdos. See you next week and have a fantastic rest of your day.